Hi, welcome back to Cooking with Legs. I'm not cooking anything today, so this isn't going to be like a cooking video. I'm more or less going to talk briefly about seasonings and maybe answer somebody who watched a couple of my videos had asked why I don't have a lot of name brand stuff in the kitchen. Again, when it comes to what ingredients you buy, that's all up to you. I focus on quality cuts of meat and fresh herbs. I put my budget into those things, and fresh seasonings. I try to stay away from the stuff that comes in the jar. I buy in bulk. I have the stuff that comes in the jar and the dried stuff for times I can't find the fresh. Now that summer's coming, I'm going to start growing an herb garden again, so I'll have nothing but hopefully freshly grown herbs, which is even better than buying fresh herbs. But yeah, I focus my stuff there. And when it comes to like generic breadcrumbs or that kind of thing, usually when I'm using breadcrumbs, I'm using a combination of Italian style and panko, and then I'll add my own seasonings to it, which I'm going to do if I buy the name brand anyway. And I don't see much of a difference, if at all. One thing that I do notice a difference in is using fresh herbs and fresh seasonings over the dried stuff. You have to figure a seasoning is like any other ingredient. It is going to dry out and stale and go sour in time. Granted, that time is shelf life is generally 6 to 8 months, unless you want saffron. Saffron's a couple of weeks, but generally speaking, it's not going to go bad right away. But how long did it sit on the shelf at the factory? How long between the time that it was planted and processed before it got to the factory? These are unknowns, so I try to purchase those types of things in bulk. And additionally, you see me using this little bowl a lot in videos. That is my combination of, it's 2 parts coarse ground pepper, 2 parts fine ground pepper, 1 part salt, and 1 part garlic powder. I use it on everything. Instead of salt and pepper, when you see people salt and pepper this, salt and pepper that, well, use fresh. Add a little bit of garlic powder to the mix. Changes it drastically. So that's what that little thing is, and I replenish that fairly often. That supply, that's one of the 2 parts and 2 parts, a 1 part mixture. That'll probably last me a couple of days to a week. Also, when you are using seasonings, do yourself a favor. Get a mortar and pestle. Man has been using these for seasonings since the dawn of time, and we still use them. There's a reason for that. It works. When you have a seasoning, it's basically a seed or a part of a plant or a bark in the case of cinnamon or something like that. When you grind it up, you're releasing the oils in it, and those oils are what's going to have the flavor compounds that are going to get into your food. Additionally, you can also use have a coffee grinder just for seasonings, also for times that like pepper especially, because it's going to take forever to grind it down to that, but in this it works great. Generally speaking, if it's something where I'm using garlic or herbs, I want to use a mortar and pestle because it's going to release oils and it'll get mushy like a paste. I don't want that in my coffee grinder, but I don't mind it in my mortar and pestle. It's just a block of granite. And the coffee grinder, I want all the dry stuff goes in there. And then of course your Peppermill, another one of those things that man has used forever. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is when you're using these, everyone has the pre-mixed seasonings. I've got Slap Your Mama in there. Got a couple of barbecue rubs that I buy pre-made. It's just part of the deal. But if you mix that up with fresh, you really elevate the flavor of your food. And it's worth taking the time to do that, in my opinion. It may take an extra 5 minutes to do a good garlic herb paste for chicken or beef or whatnot. Take the 5 minutes. You bought the food. You spent $10 on the chicken or $20 on the steak. You may as well take the extra 5 minutes as an investment to improve the flavor of it. That's just kind of my thought. Again, it's my thought. There's no rules in food, like I said before. It's just something I do. And people ask when I've had my food, what did I do differently that they haven't done or whatnot? And that's really what it comes down to, is how to treat the seasonings. Also, again, back to seasoning as an ingredient. When you see people that they season their food after it's done cooking, they turn the heat off and then they season it, or they test it and then they season it right there. When you test it, by that point you should only have to add a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. All the seasoning should come early. Just like any other ingredient, seasoning's raw. It has to cook. So a trick at a lot of Cajun food, we'll toast the seasonings. In other words, we get the pan kind of warm, we put the seasoning in there, we toast it, we take the seasoning out and add it back in at a later stage. But you've got that pan already has that aroma on it. And then you're adding food on top of that. So you're getting that aroma. It's very foundation. You hear a lot of people used to talk about cooking is like building a house. You have to have that solid foundation to build on top of it. And it really is. Your flavor profile is the same thing. You want to have that started from the beginning and just add as you go. If I'm cooking a pot of gumbo, I'm going to toast my seasoning, then I'll make my roux, then I'll add my trinity, and then I'll add a little more seasoning at that point, and then I'll add the stock or whatnot, then I'll add more seasoning. By this point, I'm going into a simmer before I add the protein in, and I just want to taste and see where I'm at. And you can kind of follow that line all the way up till it's done. That's basically how all dishes work. Gumbo is just an easy reference because I've made so much of it. But, yeah. So I just wanted to talk about that real quick. I've got nothing else really going right now. But just a little seasoning tip for you. Look at your fresh ingredients. And if you live in a place or you have a garden, grow some basil. Grow some parsley. Why not? If you don't have a garden, or if you live in a place where you can't have a garden, because it's frozen here 3 months out the year. We have to replant every year, so I'm kind of at that point. But I used to grow it in a pot. Why not? When I lived in an apartment, I grew it in a pot, and I just would pick a couple of basil leaves when I was using that. I do say basil because I use it a lot. Bay leaves. When I was a kid, Mom had bay leaf trees in front of the house. And I remember my grandfather used to come over and grab a branch to bring home so he could cook with it. And I buy bay leaves now, and I use them all the time. But we always had bay leaves in our food because it was right outside. And that fresh element just adds a whole nother level of flavor to your dish. It's remarkable what a difference one fresh ingredient can make, let alone 5 or 6 fresh ingredients. We also used to have green onions that grew out the backyard. At our last house, I grew green onions at the base of my wheelchair ramp. Just used to roll down there, grab some green onions, and go inside. And just that simple level of fresh right out the ground just elevates it. And it's worth the effort to me. In any event, just, I got struck by some questions I got asked, and some people that have had my food firsthand, and what do I do differently and whatnot. And that's one of the key things, honestly, is just that, and technique is another thing I do differently. I like getting my pan nice and hot before I throw something in to sear. My wife laughs because every time I cook, the smoke alarm goes off in my son's room. He's closest to the kitchen, but why do you have to smoke when you cook? I don't. I just get the pan hot before I put something in it, get that crust on there, get that layer of crust and that burnt on seasoning right in the meat right away. Just adds a whole nother element rather than letting it sit in there and basically instead of sear, it's braising in oil. No. Get that in there, get it nice and hot, get it cooking, throw it in the oven to finish it off. Lock those juices in. Just some little tips there. Anyway, hope y'all are having a good day. Hope everyone's doing well. Catch y'all next time. Tomorrow I'll be doing either, haven't decided yet, but either eggs Benedict or stuffed pork loin. I have no idea yet. Depends on what I wake up feeling like doing. Anyway, we'll see y'all tomorrow.